This video is sponsored by NordVPN. If you look up close at a bicycle reflector, you'll see this sort of hexagonal pattern, but it warps and changes into other things as you tilt it. And there's a really clever reason for the geometry that you see here. The purpose of a bicycle reflector is to make you more visible to car drivers, and one way to do that passively is to reflect more of the light that falls upon you. And if that's what you're trying to do, then maybe just cover yourself in lots of tiny mirrors, like a human mirror ball, because mirrors are really reflective. The problem is, mirrors work in this really predictable way. The angle of incidence always equals the angle of reflection. In other words, you don't have much control over where the reflected light goes. What you really want is for most of the light being reflected off you to end up in the eyes of the car driver. So how do you achieve that? Well, if you take two hinged mirrors and set them at 90 degrees to each other like this, or a quarter tau radians, then when I shine a laser into these two mirrors, the returning beam is always at exactly the same angle as the incoming beam. It doesn't matter how I change the angle of the incoming laser beam, the outgoing beam will always match that angle. I could put together a geometric proof to show that it's always true for any angle, or for the purposes of this video, I could just do what I like to call a proof by... Look, there you go, it's doing it. You may have spotted that this only really works in 2 dimensions, because look, if I tilt the laser pointer in this direction, actually it doesn't work anymore. The returning laser beam is not at the same angle as the incoming laser beam. To fix it for this extra dimension, I need a third mirror that is perpendicular to the first two, like this. And see, now it doesn't matter what angle I point the laser at these 3 mirrors, it will always come out at the same angle that it went in. This geometry that you end up with is the corner of a cube. See? So this is called a corner cube reflector, and it's an example of a retroreflector, which is just any reflector that sends light back in the same direction that it came from. And you can achieve this with a prism as well, like this. So light goes in through that front surface, and the rear surface has these 3 perpendicular faces. It's the corner of a cube. So the light that comes in bounces around on those 3 surfaces, comes back out in the same direction that it went in. On this prism, those 3 back surfaces have been coated with copper to make it more reflective, but it would mostly work just by total internal reflection. And that's the working principle behind bicycle reflectors. I've taken the back off this one so you can see what's going on the underside. Actually, it's still not that easy to understand through the camera, but look, if I spray paint it, hopefully that makes it a bit clearer. Can you see all those spikes in the shape of the corner of a cube? So it's just like the backside of this thing, except it's tessellated to fill up the space. We've actually put reflectors like this on the surface of the moon, and we use the travel time of laser light to figure out how far away it is. Like, is it slowly creeping up on us in the daytime? It's behind me, isn't it? So think about the light coming from the headlamps of a car. It shines onto the bicycle reflector, it bounces around inside all those tiny little corner cubes and comes back out again straight towards the lamps of the car, not towards the driver's eyes. But it turns out that actually the geometry inside here isn't perfect, so you get a little bit of a spread of that returning light, and it's enough to reach up to the level of the driver's eyes. To illustrate the point, I've put a torch just below the lens of my camera, in the same way that the headlamps of a car are just below the eye line of the driver. And look at the effect it has on the bicycle reflector. It makes it incredibly bright in the lens. And you know, I don't have to get the angle just right. It'll return that light really brightly regardless. And that's because the returning light is spreading out slightly because the geometry isn't perfect, and a lot of it ends up in the lens of the camera. I'll keep that torch on while I show you this reflective fabric. This works in a slightly different way, so it's not covered in the corners of cubes. Instead, it's covered in tiny beads. You can see that under the microscope here, and they work the same way as cat's eyes reflectors that you find embedded in roads. So this is what high-vis clothing is made of. It's also what anti-paparazzi clothing is made of, because when the flash of a camera goes off, the camera then tries to adjust for exposure like this. So look, to get the fabric looking normal, my face has to be really, really dark, and the camera does that automatically and it ruins the picture. If you've ever wondered why some street signs seem inordinately bright at night, in most cases it's because they're covered in these teeny tiny beads and they're reflecting the light back to your car. But anyway, I digress. This video is about corner cube reflectors, and it's important that each individual corner cube isn't too small. It needs to be substantially bigger than the wavelength of the light that you're wanting to reflect. Otherwise it will just scatter that wavelength, which is why radar reflectors look like this, because radar might be a few centimeters in wavelength. I found this one attached to Waterloo Bridge, and actually this one is reflecting radio waves back to a satellite. You also often find them on rescue boats where you want them to be really visible to radar. Corner reflectors can even be created by accident, by an overhanging balcony or two walls meeting at right angles like this. It creates a corner reflector for sound, and anywhere I stand in this area I can hear my voice coming back to me, and it's really weird. You might now have worked out the answer to the question posed in the title of this video. The reason you won't find a right angle on a stealth aeroplane is because they want to avoid accidentally creating corner reflectors. You don't want to send radar waves back to the detector. Brilliantly, you can use this principle to build smaller decoys. This is an AMD-20 Quail and it's about 4 meters long. It's designed to be a decoy for a B-52 bomber, which is about 50 meters long. But if you look at a B-52 bomber, it doesn't have much in the way of right angles. It's not that reflective to radar, but the decoy does have some internal reflecting right angles. So both of them appear to be just as bright to a radar, even though one is much smaller than the other. My favourite example of corner cube reflectors is actually this one that you've seen already, because you see these all over the place on the London Underground, especially at the moment at Paddington Station and Bank Station. But why are they there? Look, I'm no expert at transport infrastructure, but I know someone who is. So if you want to hear the rest of this story, head over to Geoff Marshall's channel where we work it out together in his latest video. I'll put a link to that video in the card there. It'll also be in the description, and I'll put it on the end screen as well. Geoff Marshall's channel is really good, so you should subscribe there as well. Thanks to Joey Cocke, who gave me the idea for this video in a comment to a previous video. I hope you like it, Joey. So if you're out on the roads, it's important to be visible. But if you're out on the internet, you might want to think about being less visible with a VPN. Yes, that's how I'm doing the segue. Look, I'm really grateful again to NordVPN for sponsoring this video. Let's get technical this time. When you have a VPN installed on your computer, like NordVPN, it will encrypt all the traffic that's leaving your device. That encrypted data travels over their network and pops up somewhere else in the world, and then continues its journey to the services that you're connecting to, whether that's email, websites, peer-to-peer services even. And what that means is those services don't know who or where you are, which means that if there's any like geo-restricted content that you want to see, like maybe this video isn't available in your country, you can set your VPN so you appear to be in a country that works. The other side of it is your internet service provider, or like the coffee shop whose Wi-Fi you're connecting to, can't see who or what you're connecting to. So it just gives you this extra layer of privacy and anonymity. If you go to nordvpn.com/Steve, you'll get 75% off, which is just $2.99 a month. And there's a 30-day money-back guarantee, so you can try it out completely risk-free. Why not have a look at it today? The link's also in the description. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to hit subscribe, and I'll see you next time.